It was a real-life experience. Watch and save others today. What is this? Who is touching me? Please save me. Oh. Rev, it is you, Toby echoed in the dark room at night. Reverend Chuka's reply was quick. I am not the one touching you, it was the angel. Toby, you have a great potential, he chipped in. From that night it became obvious that all that glitters is not gold. Reverend Chuka James was a man of impeccable reputation. A towering figure in the small town of Abobo, he was adored for his benevolent deeds and charismatic sermons. Known for his generosity, Reverend James housed several young boys from troubled backgrounds, claiming to provide them with shelter, education, and spiritual guidance. Parents revered him as a savior. Some willingly asked their male children to visit the Rev for admonitions at St. Jude Church Abobo. The boys saw him as a father figure. After all, they were his only children. As a Rev he was not married. But behind his holy demeanor lay a shadowy secret, concealed beneath his flowing white cassock. 15-year-old Tari was the newest addition to the Reverend's household. Orphaned at a young age and shunned by his extended family, Tari had wandered the streets, scavenging for food and sleeping in abandoned buildings. Reverend Chuka found him one rainy evening, shivering under a broken stall at the market square. My son, God sent me to you, the Reverend had said, his deep voice resounding with warmth. You'll have a bed to sleep in, food to eat, and a chance to go to school. Come with me. Tari, desperate and naive, followed the Reverend, tears of gratitude streaming down his cheeks. The Reverend's large compound, surrounded by high walls and a beautiful iron gate, seemed like paradise compared to the filth of the streets. Other boys, all neatly dressed and smiling, welcomed him warmly. At first, life in the Reverend's home seemed perfect. The boys attended school, prayed together, and enjoyed home-cooked meals. But as the weeks passed, Tari began to notice peculiar things. The older boys often seemed tense, whispering among themselves when the Reverend wasn't around. One night, as Tari sat on the veranda gazing at the stars, 16-year-old Toby approached him. Be careful, Tari, Toby whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Not everything here is as it seems. What do you mean? Tari asked, confused. Just be careful. That's all I'm saying. All that glitters is not gold. There are more questions to the innocent faces, Toby concluded and walked away before Tari could press further. The cryptic warning gnawed at him, but he brushed it off, convinced that Toby was simply being dramatic. A month later, Reverend Chuka called Tari to his private study late at night. The room was dimly lit, its air thick with the scent of incense. The Reverend handed Tari a glass of juice, his smile too wide, his voice too kind. You're special, Tari, he said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. God has great plans for you, but you must trust me completely. Something about the Reverend's touch made Tari uncomfortable. He nodded and sipped the juice, forcing a smile. That night, he couldn't sleep, haunted by a vague unease he couldn't articulate. Just as the Rev tried to press further and touch him, he slapped his hands off his body, and the Rev's phone rang. As he stepped out of the room to take the call, Tari ran out of the room. It was International Donor Agency that called the Reverend Chuka that night. He had taken pictures of the boys, dressed them as destitutes to attract funds from the agency. But beyond this obvious scam, there were also spiritual and moral scams that the Rev hid under his cassock. He spent that night on phone call with the agency, and that call saved Tari from experiencing torturous and psychological harm that the Rev inflict on his male victims. One day, While cleaning the reverend's room, Tari accidentally stumbled upon a locked drawer. Curiosity got the better of him, and he picked the lock using a hairpin he'd found in the kitchen. Inside, he discovered a stash of photographs, pictures of the boys in the house, taken without their knowledge. Some of the images were innocent enough, but others made his stomach churn. He also found a journal filled with disturbing entries about purifying the boys. His hands trembled as he returned the items and locked the drawer. Fear gripped him, but he resolved to find out the truth. Tari confided in Toby, who revealed the full horror of the reverend's actions. The man who preached love and salvation was a predator, exploiting the boys under his care. Those who resisted his advances were punished, either through starvation or expulsion back to the streets. Toby explained that he and a few of the older boys were planning to run away. "But we can't just leave quietly," Toby said. "We need evidence to expose him. Otherwise, he'll keep doing this to other boys." Tari agreed, and together, they hatched a plan. Over the next few weeks, they secretly recorded the reverend's behavior using an old smartphone one of the boys had hidden. The night of their escape was stormy, the thunder masking the sound of their movements. Just as they were about to slip out through a side gate, Reverend Chuka appeared, his figure illuminated by a flash of lightning. "Where do you think you're going?" he bellowed, his voice shaking with rage. Toby stepped forward, holding up the phone. "We know the truth, Reverend. We have proof. If you try to stop us, we'll send it to the police." The Reverend's face twisted with fury and desperation. "What truth?" He lunged at Toby, but the other boys intervened, allowing Toby and Tari to escape. They ran through the rain-soaked streets, not stopping until they reached the local police station. The evidence on the phone was damning, and the authorities wasted no time arresting Reverend Chuka. As the news spread, the town was thrown into turmoil. Many struggled to reconcile the image of the kind-hearted Reverend with the monster lurking beneath. The boys were placed in a government shelter, where they began to rebuild their lives. Tari, once a lost and broken child, found a new sense of purpose. He vowed to become a lawyer one day, determined to fight for justice and protect others from predators like Reverend Chuka. Years later, Tari stood before a crowd, sharing his story at a youth empowerment seminar. His voice trembled with emotion as he recounted the darkness he had endured and the light he had found. "Evil thrives in silence," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "But when we stand together, when we speak out, we can overcome anything." The audience erupted into applause, and Tari smiled, knowing that his past, though painful, had paved the way for a brighter future, not just for him, but for countless others. What crime do you think Reverend Chuka commit? Let us know your thoughts on the comment section, like, subscribe and share this video. It was a real-life experience. Save others today.